For decades, cognitive science evaluated memory on a simple scale, ranging from poor to excellent. This assumed human memory was a unitary, measurable faculty. When tested against extreme neurological data, this model shatters. The boundary condition that forces a new perspective is the 1985 clinical case of British musicologist Clive Wearing. Wearing suffered a herpes simplex encephalitis infection. In rare cases, this virus travels along neural pathways into the brain, causing massive inflammation. In Wearing, it resulted in the bilateral destruction of his hippocampus and adjacent temporal structures. This produced a devastating clinical outcome: complete antegrade and retrograde amnesia. His conscious awareness was reduced to a continuous loop, resetting roughly every 30 seconds. A capacity model cannot explain why specific abilities survive localized biological destruction. Modeling this architecture requires a multidimensional state-space framework. Wearing presents a striking clinical paradox. Despite an episodic memory span of seconds, he retained his elite ability to sight-read, play, and conduct Renaissance music. This procedural memory survived because it is rooted in the basal ganglia and cerebellum. These systems remained functional even as the hippocampus was lost. He also maintained a deep emotional attachment to his wife, Deborah. This subsystem is mediated by intact amygdala and limbic circuits, which were spared by the infection. These robust, surviving systems stand in direct opposition to the total eradication of his episodic memory consolidation. Memory operates as a dynamically weighted organizational portfolio of independent biological systems. It is an evolving balance rather than a single storage drive. To quantify this balance, we can apply the memory proportion index. The MPI is an 8-dimensional vector array identifying distinct memory subsystems. The components always sum to 1. A healthy adult produces a balanced radar chart. An expert pianist stretches the procedural axis. In Wearing, episodic memory collapses, leaving procedural and emotional systems commanding allocation. Amnesia, when seen through this mathematical lens, is not merely a loss of data, but a profound topological reorganization of functional memory systems. Resource allocation is only half of the equation. Because cognitive organization is time-dependent, we also need to measure how long these states persist. The Memory Stability Index calculates the rate of change within the organization over time. A healthy episodic vector maintains a smooth, consistent structure. In contrast, Wearing's episodic vector violently crashes to 0 every 30 seconds, representing an MSI at its extreme theoretical limit. Wearing documented this instability in his diary. He repeatedly crossed out entries declaring his first awakening, only to rewrite them minutes later. This behavior is the physical manifestation of an episodic derivative that refuses to stabilize. Cognitive pathology is the measurable temporal instability of surviving neural resources. These parallel memory systems do not function in isolation. They must constantly and rapidly exchange information to produce a coherent stream of thought. We define these interactions using a memory coupling matrix. Strong procedural pathways, like the automaticity of playing an instrument, reduce the load on working memory. This highly weighted coupling allows skills to run in the background, freeing active reasoning. This explains why two people with the same memory proportions can perform differently. Their internal routing, the coupling between their systems, determines their overall efficiency. High-functioning cognition depends on the optimized matrix routing information between these subsystems. By combining allocation, stability, and coupling, we arrive at the Memory Continuity Index. This provides a single metric for the functional coherence of an individual's cognitive organization. The MCI balances temporal persistence against organizational deviation. It allows us to calculate how well an identity holds together over time. These indices align with the Brain Kinematics Model, which treats cognitive organization as a physical state rather than an abstract concept. Under the BKM, memories are dynamic organizational states. They are strain flow continua, patterns of energy moving through neural circuitry to maintain a configuration. This model tracks the physical flow of neural strain packages and their residence time within specific cortical hubs. Memory is a circulating physical state. If the flow stops, the organization collapses and the memory ceases to exist. Applying this multidimensional model to Clive Wearing clarifies the nature of his condition. clinical observations long suggested that his experience was not a uniform loss of memory. While his episodic continuity was shattered, his procedural and emotional continua remained highly coupled and stable. He retained a musical and emotional identity, even without a temporal context to anchor them. This framework provides a state space for researchers to track aging, map the progression of neurodegenerative disease, and optimize educational interventions. Translating clinical observations into these dynamic vectors allows us to quantify the functional geometry as the human mind.